Hi, Denny Johnson again, and this is a introduction to body types. This is what the body types are relative to different family members from the family tree, the grandparents, the great-grandparents, and so on. This is about how to use the birth order sequences and the connection to the family tree to be able to understand the things that are affecting a child or an adult. This is about how to use the body shape of the face, the patterns of the hands and the thumbs and the skin, family history, how to be able to use the information to be able to understand the dynamic forces that are affecting the body and mind of each one of us. This is what my experience is about the body types. Now this will go through a series of different recordings, and this will be a part one of maybe 3 or 4 about how to do this, including how to be able to take the traumatic events of one's life. What age did they occur? What part of the family tree might have been involved in it? Take a medical history of yourself or your parents. If your great-grandfather died of a stroke or a heart attack, how that might be affecting different parts of your own ability to move life force. Now for me, all of this is related to the yin and yang forces of the body. And these terms, yin and yang, masculine or feminine, they have no association with another system of Chinese medicine or Vedic medicine. They're just masculine, feminine forces in the family tree. Now this is about a circulation of life force that moves in and out of the body all the time, connecting the physical body to the spiritual body and the soul. So this circulation of the life force has a very important function for being able to bring everything that we know about health or happiness. Now when this life force function becomes disrupted, it can be observed in the different symptoms or changes in the body shape or chemistry or so on. We're going to look at first what is the corresponding normal body type for each one of the 6 boys or 6 girls, meaning if you had 6 different sisters, all from the same father, then they would most likely have 6 different body types. And then what you'll find after you examine this for a while, there's a characteristic body type for number 1 girl. There's a characteristic body type for number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And these are very predictable no matter where you go in the world or what type of cultural environment you find yourself in. These body types are very consistent. Now you will find that these are modified later by the birth order and the body type of the mother and the father and the grandparents. So you're going to get lots of permutations, but you're going to get basically 2 different types. You're going to get a yang body type, which means generally speaking more muscular in some form, larger bone, and oftentimes more solid, more mesomorphic in the physical body. Or you're going to get the more yin body type, which is oftentimes more slender, smoother skin in some ways, oftentimes a little taller in some cases. So you're going to look at the more feminine body types or the more masculine. What you'll find is that the ones in red, by the way, 1, 3, and 5, they are the 3 sisters from the father's side of the family. So these 3 sisters, 1, 3, and 5, they usually have the most solid body type. By that means usually larger hips or larger chest or larger arms, bigger boned in some way. Number 1 girl usually has more of what we call sometimes a pear-shaped body and wider hips. They usually have slightly shorter legs, and oftentimes they may be the shortest of the sisters, but not always, because the girl right behind her may actually be a little smaller in every aspect, thinner in the body, and sometimes a little shorter or not. But generally the second girl is more yin than the first girl. Then the third girl is like the first girl again, but instead of a concentration around the hips, she usually has a greater sense of strength across her solar plexus and chest, usually broader in the chest in some way. Sometimes the third girl is just more stocky in some regard and is a more physically mesomorphic type of solid constitution. The fourth girl is like the second girl, also more yin, but usually taller. She's taller and more thin than the number 3 or the number 1. Usually taller than the number 2. She can be a little bigger than number 2, but just slightly, or a little taller. Number 5, which is like number 1 and number 3, is usually the largest, biggest bone type of woman. She's usually fairly tall in some form, and usually has an emphasis along the shoulders and arms. Shoulders, arms, and head. She is just basically oftentimes an athletic woman or a bigger boned woman. So these 3, 1, 3, and 5, are more solid of body. Number 2, 4, and 6, usually more narrow, thin, or yin. Usually the tallest, very close between 5 and 6, but usually number 6 is the tallest of the girls. But remember, all of this is going to be modified by the birth order and body types of the mother and the father and the grandparents, but these are the universal body types of the 6 girls. They alternate. Now, later on, we'll use these body types to be able to assess, is this number 1 girl like this body type or not? So sometimes when you have a reversal or some type of what's called a switching or an adaptation, when the number 1 girl is not this body type, she becomes more yin, then it changes the body type subsequently for all of her sisters. Meaning, number 2 now becomes more masculine in the body type, number 3 becomes more feminine, and so on. So by assessing whether or not there's a consistency at the top of this birth order, it gives us clues about the number 1 girl going yin, and the result of that and how it affects the emotional and physical well-being, not only of that first number 1 girl, but how it affects the sequences of all of the siblings after her. Later on, these are very important for how to be able to do the maximum assessment or support for each one of these positions. I'll come back and do case studies on the what would be called a number 1 girl who goes yin, a number 2 girl who goes yang, and these are very standard long-term case studies based on the social dynamics of their mother and their father. For example, if you have a number 1 girl, generally connected more to father's family and father's mother, but there's a loss of the father or a loss of contact to the father's mother, or some abuse between father and the number 1 girl, then the number 1 girl goes into more of a yin body type or disposition, changes her psychological makeup, changes her passion for life, changes many things. But what it also does is forces the second girl, instead of being yin, the second girl goes more yang and begins to act more like the characteristic number 1 girl. This changes the psychological and physical dynamics, not only between the first 2 sisters, but all the subsequent siblings, and it also affects their relationship attraction, their health, and their own children. So by being able to get this map more clearly utilized, you can understand the forces that are affecting them. Now, the 6 boys are just like the 6 girls, but they have distinctly opposite body types as well. For example, number 1 son is generally more thin. Number 2 is usually more bulldog-like, more square shoulders, oftentimes when they're older, a little bit more of a pot belly. Number 2 is more of a physical type. 3 is like number 1. He can be even taller than number 1, but he's oftentimes more narrow, more angular in the face or the body. Number 4 is like number 2 again. All 3 of the red ones from the father's side have more solid frames. So generally, all of the red type, or all of the children primarily associated with the father's side of the family, have more solid constitutions in the physical body. So number 4 has a tendency for more energy across the chest and shoulders in some way. Number 6 is usually the tallest of the boys, usually the largest of the physical-bodied men. And you'll see this sequence between 2 and 4 and 6 as they get bigger and the body type goes up. You'll see the 1, 3, and 5, the narrow and slender types, including the number 5 boy generally having the tallest but most slender of the body types. The body height between 5 and 6 are oftentimes very similar, though probably number 6 boy is maybe just a little bit taller overall. Now these are the characteristic body types of the 6 girls and 6 boys. We can go into case studies and examples of this and how it does change. For example, you can have a number 1 son. He has a yang-oriented mother, and he goes and becomes a slightly more yang-oriented body type, changing the constitutional framework of all his subsequent siblings. So having a standard body type topography and beginning to understand the influences that change this gives you a lot more appreciation for how the yang body types, they evolve and they are capable of certain specific skills. All of the yang body types, they have more solidness of body, more fire, more aggression, more of a tendency for social dynamics in some way. So there are characteristic body types for the yang, characteristic body types for the yin, personality attractions, natural abilities. So part of this whole process of looking at the body types, looking at the ascending and descending forces, is how to do an assessment. So the assessment has a lot to do with combining this information with the structure of the iris of the eye, and how to be able to make this assessment to understand what is the natural capacity of this particular person, how to support the genetic origin. For example, if you have a number 1 girl and she is related to the father's side of the family, how to support this development which corresponds to her birth order position, and how to develop that for her maximum career abilities or personality expression, natural creativity or imagination that is associated with number 1. So this is how to do the assessment based on the body types. Then how to support and give them some guidance for development. There's a different characteristic development for the number 2 girl than there is a number 1. There's a different assessment for number 3 and number 4. Each one of them has different needs for their natural curiosity, for their own natural passions, how to be able to support what their career abilities might be years later, what gifts, what music, what nature experiences or fairy tales might work. So by being able to do the assessment, we can support and maximize the development of each child. Also, we can begin to engage in regeneration. How to understand the forces of the ascending and descending affecting each one of the body types. Sometimes I like to consider a body type is like a tree that has been subject to winds, and how the shapes of the branches are shaped by the flow of the wind, or the rocks in the river being shaped over thousands of years by the flowing of the water. This is what the ascending and descending forces are doing to the body. They're producing a change in the body type. They're producing body chemistry changes, hormonal changes, all based on the ascending and descending forces. Later on, you'll be able to begin to assess which parts of the family tree are actually disabling the capacities for regeneration. Regeneration comes more when there is an equilibrium of the yin and the yang forces. Later on, there's a biochemistry, herbal medicines, and naturopathic medicines for yin or yang distribution of fire or cooling functions. How to do regeneration based on the whole body type assessment. Then prevention. How to be able to take children or adults and be able to understand, according to the body type, what is the ideal self-balancing that they might do with their own ascending and descending forces, how to correct damaged places in the family tree before they become embedded into social or physical experiences. Literally, how to prevent disease and suffering before it ever occurs. This is most useful for children under the age of 8. So by being able to assess the body type functions of the mother and the father and the grandparents, you can pretty much take the body type of the children under 8 and predict which parts of the family tree are going to be obstructed or overstimulated on the ascending forces of the yin and the yang. Yes, this is a lot. It requires some case studies. But you can also add it to this information. The shape of the face, which literally the shape of the face and the contour, all of this is also part of the assessment of the body type of the individual. The hands, I like to look at the shape of the hands, the shape of the base of the hand versus the length of the fingers, and then another one of these recordings will go into the hands and the thumbs, meaning that literally by looking at the half moons at the base of the thumbs, you can see which side of the body or brain, which ascending or descending forces in the body that need correction or stimulation. You can look at the skin, not only on the hands but on the face. You can look for blemishes on the skin somewhere in the body. The arms are very useful. The face is very useful. By being able to understand the skin, you also get a better look at the pineal and the yin side of the family. Looking at the structure of the eyes, not only the iris of the eye, but looking at which eyelid is more closed. When the right eyelid is more closed, the left brain is more shut down. When the left eye is more closed, then the yin side of the family is more shut down. You might be able to look at the underlying dynamics in the family that create this. So we'll go through all of these at another time. This is an overall basic introduction. This is part 1 of the body assessment or body language according to the RAID method of the family tree. This is an introduction. Stick around, we'll go into part 2 utilizing this information about the face, the hands, the thumbs, and the skin. Have a good day.